So touching like on your profession specifically a bit more, like what sort of does that entail on a day-to-day basis? What do you do in a normal day at work? Or is there a normal day at work?
That's why I kind of like the job that I do, because every day is going to be different in terms of what's going to come through the door. At the minute, I'm doing like crisis and home treatment work. So it literally is the front line of somebody's saying they're going to go and end their own life, they come and I have to assess them at that point and, determine what's the best thing for that person. When I first qualified, I went onto a female acute ward. So it's 16 beds, female inpatient ward. I did that for 18 months, and that's where like you get your basics of, you see every different type of mental illness. You see him at the worst, you see him at the best, you see him get better, you see him go home. But at the minute, for me, it's a lot of crisis work. So getting referrals from GPs, emergency referrals, having to assess them and stuff like that. People can just turn up and ring up as well, if they're struggling, or it's madness. I think it's incomprehensible, and it's hard to describe to somebody what day to day, like, without it like putting people off as well. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to sit here and say I had 5 people come to me today saying who's going to jump off a bridge. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain, and I don't want to put a negative light on it, because I get
It's very important work, isn't it? Especially like at the moment, because over the past year, have you noticed more people have been coming to you? Like, because mental health has been so important during the pandemic, people in isolation and that.
Of course. There's been a massive increase since COVID in referrals. So like the acuity of the team, the amount of people that we're having to deal with has gone up massively. And a lot of sad situations have happened as well. I'm not going off I can't speak about what we go through at work, but in terms, if you look on social media and you look on these Facebook pages, missing people, young people committing suicide, completing suicide. I've noticed that on social media that I've been seeing more of those sorts of posts, people struggling and stuff like that. I can't go on national statistics because I've not read them before we've done the interview. I don't know if the suicide rate has gone up. I don't know. But for me, it's very acute at work. And I think as well, because GPs aren't seeing patients who are struggling. So anybody that's ringing the GP and saying, I'm struggling with my mental health, I'm struggling with this and that, they're getting an e-consult. Putting an e-consult in, your GP's ringing you for 15 minutes, and straight away what they're doing is referring into our service. And then we have to do a complete assessment of that. So that has just gone through the roof with these e-consults, the amount of referrals that we've been receiving, and it doesn't meet the criteria that it should be. For example, you ring up your GP and say, my girlfriend's finished me, I've got a broken heart. They wouldn't refer you to the cardiologist, would they? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're referring to specialist mental health for things that we can't help people with that sort of stuff. We're for acute illness, not for, relationship breakdowns, stuff like that. People not being able to cope with the lockdown. There's no magic cure for that, is there?
No.
I can go on tangents here, so you might have to rein me in with some of these questions.
No, it's great. It's great. There's it's an important topic, especially at the moment.
It is an important topic. Like me and Jamie want to do something in terms of like a podcast about mental health and stuff like that, and speaking about it on a platform where it's normalized. It's taboo, isn't it? People don't want to mention it. People, it's fucking rife. People who are struggling, with anxiety and feeling low and stuff like that, and depression, and a massive part of it is drug use as well. In amongst young people now, drug use is normalized, specific drugs, and people will be struggling with the mental health, and they think that it's the mental health, but it's not. It's what they're choosing to do at the weekend, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's good to talk about that and educate people. Actually, are you struggling? What life choices can you make to improve your mental health? Because there is basics that you can do as a person that you don't need somebody really to tell you, which is eat healthy, do some exercise, stop drinking as much alcohol, and don't take drugs.
Yeah.
Basics, isn't it?
It's as simple as that, isn't it?
It is. If you want to help yourself, if you feel like you're struggling with your mental health, and you can think about what you're doing, how you're living your life, are you eating properly? Are you getting at least half an hour exercise a day? And are you taking any substances? caffeine can be a substance. If you're drinking 16 cups of coffee a day and then you're saying you can't sleep, or your heart's beating fast, or you're feeling anxious, you're probably taking too much caffeine. It can come down to little things like that, can't it, as well, not just illicit substances.
Yeah, that's already covered my next question there, which would be, what advice would you give? So
think about the basics. Exercise is a massive. I know when I felt down, the job that I do has made me feel down, because you're dealing with some heavy stuff. Do you know what I mean? And exercise is a massive one for me. If I know I'm getting half an hour's exercise a day, endorphins, feeling better about yourself, it's a massive thing that I would advise young people to get into some form of exercise or sport.
Yeah. How can people
stop taking drugs?
How can people sort of motivate themselves to do that? Do they just need to get out there and do it? Or
depends, because loads of people are individually different, aren't they? If somebody's struggling to actually find motivation, again, if it's in terms of depression and motivation, go and speak to somebody. If you can't get out of bed, if you're struggling to go and motivate yourself to wash, to eat properly, to get up in the morning, have a good sleep, go and speak to somebody about that, because it could be depression, and it could be something that you might be able to get some form of medication for. But aside from that, if you're not, but you are struggling to go for a run and stuff like that, it's small steps, isn't it? Small steps, like rather than doing a full half an hour's exercise, do 10 minutes. You know what I mean? See how you feel after that. I know when I go for a run, when I set off, until I get back, I hate every single minute of it, and I think, why have I done it? Why have I done it? It's when you get to the end that you notice the benefit. It's hard to try and instill motivation with somebody, but when you get to the end of hard work, that's when you notice the benefit. You've just got to understand that it is hard work at the end of the day, and you're gonna have to put up with some form of suffering for a gain, aren't you?
Yeah. So with your job and with seeing people who do suffer to like the most extreme point, so
yeah,
is exercise the most important thing for you personally when you're coping with your own sort of issues?
Yeah, in terms of my own issues, definitely. Cut out the ale, stop drinking too much, eat healthily is a massive thing. If you eat crap, you're going to think crap, aren't you, as well? And
Yeah.
the more crap you eat, the more you crave crap food.
Yeah.
So mine was a big thing, was my diet and stuff, and keeping myself occupied. If I sit there and think about things and don't, and I forget, what I'll do is I'll get home now and I'll look at a cooking book recipe, get the ingredients, go to Tesco, get the stuff, come back, spend a couple of hours cooking something nice, eat it, and then go to bed after, like a run or before a run. That's what I have to do to help myself. Otherwise, I'd come home and I'd open a bottle of wine and I'd have 3 glasses before I order a pizza, or I'll put a pizza in the oven, and then I'll finish that bottle of wine and maybe have 2 more beers and then go to bed. And then I wake up and it's not, for me, it made me struggle more. But I thought it was a coping mechanism, because after a hard day, I do look at a glass of wine or something like that, or some form of alcohol to help, after a difficult day at work. That's something that I've looked at, that I've had to address myself, because it was getting out of hand and it wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
In terms of people at the worst of the worst, in terms of mental health, we need professional intervention, and if my only advice would be, if I know, going back to the GP referrals, and I was getting a lot of pointless referrals, but I don't want to discourage people to go and speak to somebody if it is serious, if they are at that point.
Yeah. So is there any websites or anything you can recommend to people if they're not really comfortable calling someone up? Or
I think there's I should know these, because like I put them in my assessments and I read them out to people and stuff. If I'm speaking to someone on the phone, but because I'm at work, I don't have them next to the computer. I think there's like mind.com, stuff like that. I know people can ring the Samaritans as well. There's a new initiative out. There's a crisis line now, which is just been rolled out across England, I think now, where it's the first point of contact for people who are in a crisis or who are in a mental health crisis, and they have like a biopsychosocial screening. So if you ring that number, I know in Warrington it's 0800 051 150, but if you just Google it, there's a new initiative in England now that every area has to have a crisis line. And that in itself is a good form of getting advice, because you go through quite an extensive form with a practitioner who then gives you advice at the end.
Yeah.
So I'd say contact the crisis line as advice for people at the moment in terms of their area. Google the local crisis line, give it a call. If you're struggling with your mental health, don't just give them a chat, like, you know.
Yeah.
What was the original question? I keep forgetting, going on tangents.
No, that covered it. Yeah, that was perfect.